Welcome back to Maintenance Monday. Today I'm going to take you through how to install and set up the new Wahoo Speedplay cleats onto your cycling shoes. First up, what are you going to need? Well, of course, you're going to need your new cleats ready to fit onto your shoes. And then, best off, we're only going to need two tools. We've got a Phillips screwdriver and another Phillips screwdriver. This one is slightly larger, and this one is quite a small, teeny tiny one, which we'll use to set the cleats up later on. In case you're not familiar with the Wahoo Speedplay system, it's slightly different to what you might have seen before because the spring and retention mechanism is built into the cleat rather than on the pedal itself. So let's get these unboxed and make sure we have all the right parts. Okay, so what have we got inside the box? First up, this is the base plate, and of course all these parts you're going to have two of for the left and the right shoe. The base plate is the part which goes onto the bottom of our shoe. And on the back of it here, you can see these blue shims, and there's a selection of those included in the box. The reason we have these is to make sure that this base plate fits and mimics the angle and curve of our cycling shoe, because they all vary very slightly. So these blue shims, there's some thicker ones and some thinner ones to make sure that it sits nice and flush, mimics the profile. Perfect. The base plate is held in place using this little screw. There's a selection of these included in the box. Some are slightly longer. Normally, these black ones are perfectly fine. And then sitting on top of the base plate is the top plate. This is the part which has the spring and the retention mechanism in. And it's also on the side here, you can see we've got these two screws which allow us to adjust and position where the float of the shoe is. And that's what dictates how much your foot can pivot when you're clipped in. That's held in place using these teeny tiny screws. And there's four of these for each side of your shoe. Finally, to finish fitting your cleats and make it all look sleek and neat and tidy, is this nice little cover. It's also designed to try and improve aerodynamics a little bit, but yeah, just makes it look smart. Nearly all shoes will have this 3-bolt cleat fitting on them, and that means that this base plate mimics that and sits on there perfectly fine. However, there are some shoes out there which are designed to be Wahoo Speedplay specific, and that means you don't have to use this separate base plate. This top plate can bolt directly onto the sole of your shoe. However, for the purposes of this video, I need to use the 3-bolt fitting. So first thing I need to do is place this on top of here, and then get these screws here, the longer ones, and thread these into place. This is a fairly simple process. Thread them in, 1, 2, and then the third one. Can use our screwdriver to get these into place, and we don't need to do them up very tight, just loose enough to hold it all in place, and we can then position the cleat accordingly. So I've left the bolt still slightly loose on the base plate so that I can move it forwards and backwards like this. The reason for that is to allow me to position the base plate so that this center line here is in line with the ball of your foot, which in turn will be in line with the axle of the pedal. Now, if you're unsure where to position this, you can just simply pop your shoe on and then mark on the side with a little bit of tape where the ball of your foot sits, and that's the most efficient place to have. And if you're moving from a different pedal system, it's the same principle. You just line the center of the ball of your foot up with this center line here and screw it and secure it in place. Next up, we need to install the top plate. Now, it's important here to note that these are sided left and right. This is the right hand shoe, so I'm going to use the right hand top plate. Now, handily, it's written on each one, right and left. What you do need to remember is that this part here that is threaded and allows us to adjust the float of the cleat needs to sit on the outside of the shoe. So let me just hold this up and show you. So this is the right hand shoe, the right hand top plate, and the threaded part sits on the outside like that. Then we can put all 4 of these little bolts in place following the same process, leave them slightly loose, and it will allow us to position the cleat left and right to get our foot to sit centrally onto the pedal. So you can see with the bolts loose, I can then position the top plate left and right as I feel is best. But I already know that I have these positioned centrally, and the idea behind this is try to get your foot to sit centrally on the pedal. It's a bit of a sort of fail-safe position as well. And then you can go ahead and tighten these up to lock it in place. You don't need to over-tighten them because there is 4 of them and they are fairly small. So in the realms of about 4 to 5 Newton meters should be okay. And the same applies for the screws holding the base plate onto the shoe. Now, to get your cleats set up perfectly, you are going to have to go and see a bike fitter who can assess your riding style and position on the bike to make sure you get them set up best for you. The method I've explained is kind of a bit of a fail-safe to get you set up and functional rather than the best way to get the cleats set up specifically for you. So bear that in mind. Now that we've got the cleat secured in place on the shoe, the next thing we can do is move to setting the float. And that's one of the main advantages of the Wahoo Speedplay system, is that it's completely adjustable from wide open to almost fixed in place. So you could have the float so it's really open, so your foot has a lot of movement while it's clipped into the pedal. You can have it so there's just a little bit of movement. And you could have it completely fixed in place and then position where your foot sits. So you could have it fixed, angled out slightly, you can have it fixed in a neutral position, or you can have it fixed facing in. And that is the big advantage of this system. But for the purposes of this video, we'll probably have them in a fairly neutral position so that we're not going to cause any issues with your knees or your hips, for example. It's adjusted using these screws here, carefully labelled, heel out on this side and heel in on this side. We can see they're already in a fairly open position, so that would allow your foot to sit nicely in place and shouldn't cause you any issues. Personally, I set it up so that the heel in screw is limiting the movement of my heel, so there's no way it can hit the crank. All we can do with these is simply adjust them using our small screwdriver and wind them in or out to position your foot accordingly to how you find best. You can just adjust it, jump on the bike while you're in your garage, your kitchen or your living room, check it, see how it is, and then you can adjust it to get it just right. You can do that before having to put the cover on. There's no need to add it on, take it off in between each step. Once you've got the float fixed and set in place that you're happy with, we can move on to fitting the cover. Fitting the cover on the cleats is super easy, and luckily it's all written on the inside here. So we've got attach this side first, this is the front, and it's also the right hand side. So let's do it. This side goes on the inside edge of your foot. So we push that down and clip that into place. It does take a bit of a firm push to make sure you've got it clipped over the edges. Then we can work our way across to the outside and push it as we go, making sure it clips over the edges. It does take a bit of a firm push to get this in place. Otherwise, you'll be riding along and your little cover will pop off. There we go, in place, and you can see side on, looks pretty sleek. So there you have it, your new cleats set up, ready to go. A little bit of a more involved process than some of the other pedal systems out there, but I think it's worth it for all the added adjustability that is built into this. All you need to do now is to repeat the exact same process on the left-hand shoe and you're ready to hit the road. Hope you enjoyed this maintenance video. If you have, please give it a big thumbs up. Let me know what you think of Wahoo Speedplay pedals in the comment section down below. And if you've got any suggestions for other maintenance videos you'd like to see, we'll get that down there too. See ya.